Hello, we have finished Excel 1 Project 1 and we're now ready for Excel 1 Project 2. So I already have the instructions downloaded here, so let's open up our, there's our instructions, but I need to download our starter file. So right here, Project 2, XLSX, that's the extension for Excel. Come down here to the bottom of our screen and bring up our document here. First thing we need to do is enable the editing and then save our document, putting your last name at the end after the 2 in Project 2. So Excel Module 1 Project 2 and then your last name. This first worksheet, again, is just a document letting you know that, hey, this is Trust Haven Insurance, and this is the document that we're on. What we are doing with this particular assignment is that we're an insurance agent working for the company, and we have a worksheet to track our sales of life insurance and commissions. So the first thing we need to do is come down here to our life insurance sales worksheet, where we have our documentation worksheet here, and we're going to come down here to life insurance sales, and here's our worksheet. I'm going to come down here, down in the corner we have our zoom bar. I'm just going to zoom a little bit just to make my work area a little bit larger so it's a little easier for me to see and probably you to see as well. So the first thing we need to do is use our autofill to fill the range C6 through D6 based on the value in cell B6. So we need to come to B6. So we've got our column B, row 6, and so it's January. So by default, when you think maybe what should be in C6, probably should be February and then March. We could type those in, but in Excel we have an autofill feature where it will automatically put that in for us, so we don't have to worry about leaving that R out in February. So I'm going to come up here and make my mouse look like the little crosshairs, little skinny plus sign, and that's grabbing what's called the fill handle. Then I'm going to click and I'm going to drag to D3, and it's going to put in February and March, and it's going to make them capitalized and spell it correctly, so I don't have to worry about any of that. That's called the autofill function, and it's really a cool little thing that we can do with Excel. So now we are going to go to cell E7. So here's column E7. And this little box right here is our fill options box. And it's going to stay there until we type something in. So don't worry about that. It will go away when we type something. In E7, we want to enter a formula that uses the sum function to total the range of B7 through D7. So we've got B7 through D7, and we want to add it up here, and we want to use the sum function. A couple of ways we can get to the sum function. What we're going to do right now is come up here to the autofill box, sorry about that, and we're going to say the sum function, that's the one we want, and it's going to automatically put a little box around these three. It just automatically assumes that we want the cells next to the cell that are adjacent for our numbers. And that's correct, so I can click up here on my checkbox. And now what we're going to do is use the fill handle, again, this little nice little box right here, and we're going to drag it down to E12. And it's going to automatically sum those functions up. And again, we have our little fill options box here, and again, it will stay there until we type something else. So Tasha receives a 40% sales as a commission, and so right here we've got our commission, 4%. So in F7, we want to enter a formula that multiplies the value in E7 by the value in F4 that's going to collect to calculate the 40% term. Now we have to use what's called an absolute cell reference for this. Remember when we copied these cells down, this cell was adding up B7 through D7, and when we copied it down, it automatically took it down to B8 to D8, and then it moved down to B9. So we want to do something with the formula, and we want to include F4 in the formula. But when we copy that formula down, we want it to always refer back to F4. So we have to absolutely tell the formula to go to F4. So to do that, we put dollar signs in front of the cell reference. And let me show you how we do that. So we're going to come down here to E7, and we want to calculate the 40% term. So we're going to put equals first because we're putting a formula in, and we want E4, and we want to multiply it, so that's the asterisk, and we want to come up here and we want it to be F4. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in a dollar sign F dollar sign 4. So it's telling it, hey, always go back to F4 for our formula. If you don't put the formula in there, then you can't just copy it. If you don't put the dollar signs in to make it absolute reference, you can't copy it down. So I'm going to hit enter here, and now I can come down here and I can copy it down, and it copies it down. So here the next one is E8 times F4. Here's E9 times F4. So if we didn't put that dollar sign in there, this would also be going down, and so we would have, this would be incorrect. So you want to make sure you put the dollar signs in front of the F4, so that tells Excel that this is an absolute cell formula. Okay, so now that we've got our commission figured out, we're going to go ahead and come down here and do some more functions on our worksheet. We want to calculate the statistics on her life insurance sales in Q1. That's what we're looking at, January, February, and March. So in cell B16, so we're going to come to column B, row 16. And we're going to determine the average. Now, what you have to watch for when we're figuring these average, maximum, and minimum information is the range of your data that you're looking at. So we want the average of our data from B7 through D12. So one thing we can do, we can just come up here to the auto sum, because average is one of those that's real common. So we've got our average, but you can see it thinks that we only want the average of B15, and that's not correct. We want the average of B7 through D12. So we're going to come over here and we're going to click in B7, hold the mouse down, and then drag to D12. Now you want to do that in one move, one smooth move. We want the average B7 through D12. You can also just type it in up here if you wish. Either way will work. So we're going to click on the check mark, and so there's our average of B7 through D12. You only want those 3 columns. Now in B17, we want our maximum cells from D7 through D12. So we can do the same thing. We can come up here to the auto sum, and we can hit max, and then we can select that range again in just one fluid move. We're going to click in B7, keep holding our mouse down, and go to D12 again, and let go, and hit the check mark. And then we want the minimum cells. So again, come up here to the auto sum, and we got the minimum, and we want B7, drag to D12, and then hit the check mark. Okay. So we've got our maximum and minimum and our average figured out. So now we want to quickly identify the policy type that generated the most cells in quarter one, which was the term policy. You can tell that by looking at the commissions. So we want to copy cell A7 and then paste only the value in cell C17. So we're going to come here to A7. Let me read this again. We want to copy cell A7 and then paste only the value in cell C17. So we've got C17. So we're going to A7 and we're going to copy, and then we're going to paste it down in C17. And so we know that that was the term policy that we had our maximum cells on. And then we want to cut the formula in cell F14. So we've got F14 right here because we put this in the wrong place. This is our maximum commission formula. So this is showing us our maximum of F7 to F12. So if we look at this formula and we look up here at the formula, or if we double click on the cell, when you double click on the cell, it shows you the formula and then it highlights the area that is feeding the formula, what is making it run. So right now that's just sitting out over in the middle. Now to turn this part off, I just hit the escape key on my keyboard and it will take the extra little lines away there. So I want to cut this, then I want to paste it down here in B19. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to cut. I can use the keyboard shortcut Control X, or I can come up here to cut, and then down in B19 I'm going to paste. So I'm moving it. It's still, if I double click on it here, you can still, it's still feeding from over here. I've just put it in the correct location on my worksheet. So the last thing that we want to do on here is change the orientation of our worksheet to portrait. Now remember, landscape is a long 8.5 by 12, and we want to make it so it's 8.5 by 11. We want it portrait. So up here under page layout, we've got our orientation. Usually by default, Excel is in landscape mode. We want to change that to portrait. Okay, so you can see now we have this line that appeared over here. It's a real fine dotted line, and this shows us the edge of our paper on our spreadsheet here. So you can make sure that if you're printing it, you don't want just one column on one sheet by itself. It just shows you where the end of it is. And we want to put a page break here above row 20 so that our information all fits in. So up here on insert, I think it's someplace different on here for me. Page layout. It's the difference in Word, it's under the Insert tab. In Excel, it's in Page Layout. We have our breaks, and we want to insert a page break. So now we can see we have our page break right here, right between 19 and 20, and then right here over on the side. So if we were to do a print preview, if we were to come up here and go to File, and then Print, it's going to show us a preview, and this is what our document would look like if we were to print it. So you always want to do a print preview before you actually print a chart or a worksheet from Excel to make sure all of your information shows up on the same page. Now, one thing I notice when I look at this is this term has highlight in the background. We don't want that to be there. We just want the word term. So I'm going to come up here to my arrow and come back over here. I'm going to come here, and on the Home tab, I've got a shading right here, and I'm just going to come over here and say no fill, and then it's going to take that off. So now that term is not highlighted, it's just the text itself. So now everything is set up the way it's supposed to do. So you're going to save it and then submit it in Blackboard for grading.